Civilian life had been difficult after leaving military service. Constant hypervigilance, sudden noises, crowded environments, everything was challenging. The education sector seemed like the perfect choice: predictable routines, calm environment, opportunity to serve young people. For Robert Harrison, this wasn't just a new career. It was a way to live like a normal person. Until that day, when civilian skills weren't enough and his Navy SEAL training became the difference between life and death. Before we continue this incredible story, tell us in the comments, from which city in the world are you watching this video today? And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, hit that subscribe button and help us honor the quiet heroes who protect our schools. Robert Harrison had been the assistant principal at Roosevelt High School in suburban Denver for 12 years. To the 800 students and 60 faculty members who saw him daily, he was the calm, methodical administrator who handled discipline issues, managed schedules, and somehow never seemed to get stressed even during the most chaotic moments of the school year. At 45, Robert looked exactly like what central casting would order for generic school administrator. Average height, graying hair, always wearing khaki pants and polo shirts, carrying a clipboard and speaking in measured diplomatic tones. Nothing about his appearance suggested he'd once been part of an elite military unit that operated in some of the world's most dangerous environments. The transition from Navy SEAL to school administrator hadn't been a straight line. After 8 years of special operations service, including deployments to Iraq, Afghanistan, and several classified locations, Robert had struggled to find his place in civilian society. The hypervigilance that kept him alive in combat zones made ordinary civilian interactions exhausting. Crowded restaurants triggered alert responses, unexpected sounds caused automatic threat assessments. Education had attracted him for several reasons. Schools operated on predictable schedules with clear hierarchies and defined protocols, structures that reminded him of military organization without the life or death stakes. Working with young people felt like a positive mission, using his leadership skills to guide teenagers rather than coordinate tactical operations. Robert had earned his education credentials through night school while working security jobs, driven by a desire to contribute to something constructive after years of combat operations. The role of assistant principal suited his temperament perfectly. Enough authority to make meaningful decisions, but not so much visibility that he'd constantly be in the spotlight explaining his background. Most faculty members at Roosevelt High respected Robert's calm competence without knowing its source. He handled angry parents with diplomatic precision, managed student conflicts with patience that seemed infinite, and coordinated emergency drills with thoroughness that impressed even the fire department inspectors. Robert never loses his cool, Principal Susan Martinez often told visiting district officials. I've seen him deal with everything from food fights to family crises, and he just has this ability to keep everyone calm and focused on solutions. What Principal Martinez didn't know was that Robert's composure came from training designed to function under extreme stress. His diplomatic skills had been developed in environments where miscommunication could result in international incidents. His crisis management experience included scenarios far more complex than anything a high school could generate. The students saw him as firm but fair, the kind of administrator who listened before making decisions and never seemed to hold grudges. Robert took genuine satisfaction in helping teenagers navigate the complex social and academic challenges of high school. In many ways, these young people reminded him of new military recruits, full of potential but needing guidance, structure, and someone who believed in their ability to succeed. That Tuesday morning started like any other. Robert arrived at school 45 minutes before first period, as was his routine. He'd walk the campus, checking that custodial staff had completed their work, that security systems were functioning, and that everything was prepared for another day of education. At 7:15 a.m., as students began arriving for zero-period classes and athletic practices, Robert was in his office reviewing the day's schedule. 3 disciplinary meetings, 2 parent conferences, and a district administrative visit. Typical Tuesday agenda for a high school serving 800 students from diverse socioeconomic backgrounds. The first sign of trouble came at 9:23 a.m. during second period. Robert was walking the hallways conducting his routine visibility check when he noticed something that triggered his threat assessment protocols. A man in dark clothing moving through the main entrance with unusual urgency and what appeared to be a large bag. Robert's military training kicked in automatically. From 50 yards away, he could see that the individual's movement patterns, clothing choices, and equipment suggested hostile intent. The bag's size and the way the man carried it indicated potential weapons. Most importantly, the person was clearly unfamiliar with the school's layout, but moving with determined purpose. While other staff members might have assumed the man was a late-arriving parent or substitute teacher, Robert's experience in threat identification told him otherwise. This was an active shooter scenario developing in real time. Robert moved swiftly but calmly toward the main office, keying his radio to alert security and administration. "Code red protocols, immediate implementation," he transmitted using the pre-established emergency language that would trigger lockdown procedures without causing panic among students who might overhear. Principal Martinez, receiving the alert in her office, trusted Robert's judgment completely. She'd never seen him call a code red drill, and his tone suggested this wasn't practice. She immediately activated the school-wide lockdown system. Throughout the building, classroom doors locked automatically. Teachers moved students away from windows and sight lines. The campus security officer positioned himself at the main administrative area, while Robert coordinated response from his position in the hallway. But Robert could see what others couldn't. The intruder had bypassed the main office area and was moving toward the classroom wings where most students and teachers were now locked down. The individual was carrying what appeared to be multiple weapons and had clearly planned this attack to maximize casualties. This was the moment when Robert Harrison stopped being a school administrator and became a Navy SEAL again. His 12 years of civilian life had been preparation for this exact scenario. Every emergency drill he'd coordinated, every crisis protocol he'd developed, every security assessment he'd conducted, all of it had been unconscious preparation for the moment when his military training would be needed to protect 800 students and 60 staff members. Robert moved through the hallways with tactical precision, using his knowledge of the building's layout to intercept the threat before it could reach occupied classrooms. His administrative radio allowed him to coordinate with local law enforcement, while his personal understanding of the school's vulnerabilities guided his strategic response. The intruder, a former student who'd been expelled 2 years earlier, had planned his attack during the transition between second and third periods, when hallways would normally be crowded with students. But Robert's early identification and immediate lockdown had eliminated that target opportunity. When Robert encountered the gunman in the B-wing corridor, his response was swift and decisive. Years of close-quarters combat training, weapons disarmament techniques, and tactical decision-making converged in a 30-second engagement that ended with the threat neutralized and weapons secured. Students locked in nearby classrooms heard brief sounds of struggle, but the engagement was over before anyone could fully process what had occurred. Robert immediately secured the weapons, provided medical assessment for the subdued intruder, and coordinated with arriving law enforcement to ensure proper evidence handling and scene control. Police arrived to find Robert Harrison, assistant principal, calmly providing a detailed briefing on the incident while maintaining security over the subdued attacker. His report was precise, thorough, and delivered with the professional competence of someone accustomed to post-incident debriefings. "Sir, what's your background?" asked Sergeant Michael Torres, the first responding officer, clearly impressed by Robert's tactical competence and professional demeanor. "Navy SEAL, 8 years active duty, retired 12 years ago," Robert replied simply. The officer's expression shifted to understanding and respect. "That explains the response quality. Outstanding work, sir. The investigation revealed that the attacker had planned a comprehensive assault designed to cause maximum casualties. He'd researched the school's schedule, identified peak occupancy periods, and acquired weapons specifically for the attack. Only Robert's early threat identification and immediate tactical response had prevented what could have been a devastating tragedy. As word of the incident spread throughout the school community, students, parents, and faculty began to understand that their quiet assistant principal had probably saved hundreds of lives. The man they'd known as a diplomatic administrator had revealed himself to be a decorated combat veteran who'd seamlessly transitioned from protecting American interests abroad to protecting American students at home. "I had no idea," said Sarah Collins, a senior who'd been sent to Mr. Harrison's office multiple times for minor disciplinary issues. "He was always so calm and fair with us. Now I understand why nothing ever seemed to rattle him." Parents who'd met with Robert during conferences began to realize that his exceptional composure and problem-solving skills had military origins. The man who'd patiently helped their teenagers work through academic and social challenges was someone who'd operated in far more dangerous and complex environments. "He treated our family crisis like it was the most important thing in the world," said Maria Gonzalez, whose son had struggled with behavioral issues. "I thought he was just a really good administrator. I didn't know he was a war hero." The media attention following the incident was intense but respectful. Robert declined most interview requests, preferring to let the school district handle public communications. When he did speak to reporters, he consistently directed attention to the school's emergency response systems and the professionalism of local law enforcement. "I did what my training prepared me to do," he told the Denver Post. "But the real heroes are the teachers who flawlessly executed lockdown procedures and the police officers who arrived ready to handle whatever they found." The incident prompted discussions about veteran employment in civilian protective roles. Robert's background suggested that military veterans might bring valuable skills to school security and administration, though he was careful to emphasize that every situation is unique and requires individual assessment. School district officials began reviewing their hiring practices and emergency protocols, recognizing that Robert's military experience had contributed significantly to the positive outcome. His 12 years of civilian service had demonstrated that veterans could successfully transition to education while maintaining readiness for crisis situations. For Robert, the incident was both validating and sobering. His decision to pursue civilian education work had been motivated by a desire to serve in peacetime roles, but the reality was that threats existed even in suburban schools. His military training had proved relevant in ways he'd hoped it never would. The students' reactions touched him most deeply. Over the following weeks, hundreds of teenagers approached him to express gratitude and respect. Many had never considered that adults in their daily lives might have extraordinary backgrounds and experiences. "You saved our lives, but you've also been helping us every day for years," wrote the student body president in a letter published in the school newspaper. "Thank you for protecting us in ways we never knew we needed." Robert returned to his normal administrative duties, but the dynamic had changed. Students and staff now understood that their assistant principal brought unique qualifications to his role. His crisis management skills, leadership experience, and calm demeanor weren't just personality traits. They were professional competencies developed through military service. The incident also sparked Robert's involvement in veteran transition programs. He began speaking at events for military personnel leaving active duty, sharing his experience of finding meaningful civilian work that utilized military skills while serving community needs. "The mission continues," he would tell audiences of transitioning veterans. "It just looks different. Every veteran has skills that civilian communities need, even if the connection isn't immediately obvious." 6 months after the incident, Roosevelt High School hosted a Veterans Appreciation Assembly. Robert was reluctantly persuaded to participate, though he insisted the focus remain on all veterans rather than his individual actions. During the ceremony, he was introduced not as the hero who stopped a school shooter, but as Assistant Principal Harrison, Navy SEAL veteran, who represented thousands of military veterans working quietly in civilian roles throughout their communities. "Mr. Harrison reminds us that heroes don't always wear uniforms," Principal Martinez told the assembled students and families. "Sometimes they wear khaki pants and carry clipboards, ready to protect us in whatever way the situation requires." After the assembly, Robert returned to his office to prepare for the next day's schedule. Parent conferences, disciplinary meetings, and administrative tasks, the same routine that had attracted him to education 12 years earlier. But now he understood something important about his role. Civilian service wasn't separate from military service. It was a continuation of the same fundamental mission. Whether protecting American interests abroad or protecting American students at home, the core purpose remained constant: service to others, readiness for crisis, and commitment to something larger than personal interests. Robert Harrison continued working as assistant principal at Roosevelt High School, carrying his military experience quietly and professionally into civilian service. He remained prepared for crisis while hoping it would never come again. And every day, 800 students and 60 staff members benefited from the leadership, composure, and protective instincts of someone who dedicated his adult life to serving others. His office desk drawer still contained his Navy SEAL identification and commendation medals, not as displays of past glory, but as reminders of ongoing responsibility. Because for some people, the mission never ends. It just adapts to new environments and different challenges. So I ask you, have you ever worked with someone whose calm competence suggested deeper experience than their job title indicated? Someone who seemed exceptionally prepared for crisis situations or demonstrated leadership skills that went beyond their obvious background? Share their story in the comments. Tell us about the teacher who seemed to know more about conflict resolution than education training typically provides, the administrator who managed emergencies with unusual expertise, or the coach whose leadership style suggested military experience. Subscribe to Hidden Hero Stories for more narratives about the hidden veterans in our communities, the service members who continue their mission in civilian careers, protecting and serving in ways most people never recognize. Thank you for watching, and remember, the next time you interact with school staff, healthcare workers, or any civilian professionals, you might be in the presence of someone whose background includes training and experience that goes far beyond what's visible on the surface. Heroes don't always wear uniforms. Sometimes they wear name badges and carry walkie-talkies, ready to use whatever skills necessary to keep our children safe.